After 102 years, New York company is soon going to be a thing of the past. What's going on, guys? I'm Jim Leadis, and today we're going to talk about the parent of this century-old women's clothing store, New York Company. They filed for bankruptcy protection and are being forced to liquidate all of its stores after being financially crippled due to forced closures caused by the current global pandemic, which I will not say the name of because YouTube likes to demonetize those videos, but you all know what I'm talking about. Now, a few months back, during the start of this whole crisis that we're facing, I released a video about a bunch of different companies that have filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and you guys seem to really enjoy that video. As you can see, the performance on it is pretty good from my channel. So with that said, I'm probably going to come out with a lot more videos about companies that have gone bankrupt due to the whole Roni, because why not, right? I mean, seriously, guys, the list is honestly endless, and I'm really curious to see what other companies out there have been severely impacted by this crisis. So let's get right into it. Why this company is closing down, why they're filing bankruptcy, what the heck is going on, and what is going to happen to their parent company, RTW. But before we get into that, guys, let's just take a moment, set aside from everything else, go ahead, click that little thumbs up button, because when you do that, it turns blue and it boosts the YouTube algorithm and it greatly helps out my video. So why not? If you're here watching this video, you may as well support the channel. Go ahead, smash that button, make it turn blue. It'll make my day. All right, now that you did that, let's continue. RTW Retailwinds Incorporated is the parent company of New York Co, but it also owns Fashion Figure and Happy X Nature. They recently filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy after being hurt by these forced foreclosures due to this whole global crisis thing, and they're about $450 million in debt with only $405 million in assets. Now, even though 92% of their brick and mortar stores have reopened after those forced foreclosures, RTW has already started liquidating their assets, closing the stores and having those closing store sales at almost 400 locations. Seamus Toll, the company's chief executive and financial chief, says, "The combined effects of a challenging retail environment coupled with the impact of a pandemic have caused significant financial distress on our business, and we expect it to continue to do so in the future." Not a good sign, Seamus. Not a good sign. Now, I think one point that's really interesting to bring up and we really got to talk about is, even before this whole global crisis that we're feeling, is that retail stores were already starting to struggle due to the thing we call the internet, right? Online shopping is in. Nobody wants to leave their house and go shopping anymore. I mean, well, I do, but you get the idea. It's just too simple to click, put in a bag, swipe the credit card. You don't even do that. It's just, honestly, it's like one click now and it shows up in 2 days. But seriously, that whole thing has been choking out the retail industry. I mean, we've already been seeing a lot of large retail stores struggle in the past 6 months, year, multiple years, honestly, before this whole pandemic has hit. And there's been a lot of locations that have been going out of business, so it's really no surprise that, you know, you combine that with a global pandemic and you just kind of push things over the edge, and that's it. See you later. Bye-bye. So like Seamus says, you combine a challenging, complicated market with an impact caused by the global pandemic that's going on and being forced to close stores down against their will for months at a time. Honestly, it's just a perfect recipe for disaster. Now, something that Seamus said that really caught my attention was that we're going to see this happen in the future. It's going to continue happening. And honestly, I really can't disagree with that. Like, I really do agree with that statement because, you know, from what everyone's saying, this whole, you know, global crisis and the state of our economy, things are going to get worse before they get better. I mean, if you think about it, you shut all these businesses down, a lot of businesses out there are just hanging on by a thread, you know, especially a lot of small local owned businesses. So if you combine that with no work coming in and nobody available to work, it's just a recipe for disaster. I could see a lot of this going on in the near future. And I mean, we're talking years of recovery, not 6 months from now, like years. Now, like I said before, the company RTW owns multiple companies, not just New York Company. Well, what happens with the other businesses that they own? Do they go under as well? Not necessarily. You see, times like these call for attention and they call for fast action. And when a business is struggling like this financially with $450 million in the hole with only $405 million in assets, you really got to act fast, otherwise the whole ship sinks. It's not just as simple as sitting back, relaxing, and hoping something good will fall in your lap, because that's not the way this world works, people. That's not how business is done. So that is exactly what RTW is doing in this situation right now. Is they're stepping back, taking a moment, restructuring their business and coming up with a game plan in the future so they could continue to conduct business. Now, yes, New York and Company, that brand may be gone forever, maybe not so much. We don't really know yet. But RTW is the parent company of that business as well as many other businesses. So they look at the weakest link in the chain and they eliminate it. Now, like many other large retailer chains out there, RTW was forced to close all those locations for a certain period of time, a few months. But they also had to draw a $40 million loan from Wells Fargo in order to maintain their financial flexibility and stay afloat during these times. Unfortunately, RTW ended up defaulting on these loans as their stores were closing down and they were not able to pay them back. They're planning to repay $12.7 million of these $40 million loans by August 31st, still about $27 million short. Now, this pandemic that we're facing was just enough to push this thing over the edge for these brick and mortar stores that were really struggling before this. As you guys saw in my last video regarding the bankruptcies caused by the Rona, companies like Brook Brothers, JCPenney, J. Crew, Lucky Brand, and others have all been impacted by this and filed bankruptcy, Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now, bankruptcy sounds like a very scary term, and it definitely can be, and it can definitely be very bad. However, it not always is the case. And in order to understand why, you really have to understand what bankruptcy is and how it all works. So if you just Google really quick a definition for bankruptcy, it reads, bankruptcy is a legal process through which people or other entities who cannot repay debts to creditors may seek relief from some or all of their debts. In most jurisdictions, bankruptcy is imposed by a court order, often initiated by the debtor. Now, that's a really great general description of what bankruptcy is, but there are like 6 different types of bankruptcies, which we will get into in a whole separate video because, well, that's a talk for another time. But for the purpose of this video, we're just going to talk about Chapter 11 and what it all means. For the most part, Chapter 11 bankruptcy is used as a reorganization plan for companies to step back a little bit, get back on their feet, and come up with a plan to keep their business going. They do this at the same time they're paying off their debt, and both the court and the creditors have to agree to this plan. So just because a company says we're filing for bankruptcy or they went bankrupt or this or that, you know, Chapter 11 bankruptcy really isn't that bad, and actually it's a very good, useful tool for a company that's taking a dive to step back and regroup, reorganize, and come up with a better game plan to really push forward and succeed. But right now, the position that RTW is in is that they need to step back a minute. Okay, they need to look at everything that's going on and find the weakest link in the chain, and that happens to be New York and Company. Otherwise, they wouldn't be going through with this and closing them out. It would be one of the other companies that they own. Now, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what ends up happening with RTW and New York & Co. because it is a very big, popular brand, but also with all the other businesses and companies out there. Like, what is a company that you know right now very well that might not be there in a couple months? I mean, if you think about it, we've only been at this crisis for, what, 4, 5 months right now? Maybe 6? It's all honestly just a blur. But you get the idea here. We have a long way to go with this thing, and the impacts that are having on our economy and on our life and business, it's going to be years. It's not going to be a couple months. It's going to be long-term years. The reality is we still need like the country to fully open up. And as we open up, the cases are spiking and we start to close down a little more. But to really measure the true impact of this whole crisis and what the outcome is going to be, we need to open up. Everybody has to go back to work. And the problem with that is there's a lot of jobs that were there before that are now gone. So until we get to that point, it's going to be really hard to measure the true impacts of this pandemic. Which is exactly why you guys should subscribe right now to the channel. This way I can keep you up to date with everything that's going on. It's as simple as clicking that little red rectangle down there in the corner and hitting the little bell notification. This way you don't miss out when I post a new video about something awesome like this. But seriously guys, on this channel, I cover everything to do with finance, investing, entrepreneurship, and money, and whatever I think is cool. And honestly, whatever you guys think is cool. So if you have any suggestions, tips, pointers, or you're just curious about some sort of topic, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to consider making a video about that, and I read and respond to pretty much all the comments, and I love getting your feedback. Don't forget to drop a like on this video if you haven't done so already. As I said before, it greatly helps out the channel, and I'd really appreciate it. Anyway guys, thank you very much for watching. I'm Jim Leadus, and I'll see you on the next one.